Today, we're going to take a look at the volume of a cylinder. When we think about a cylinder, it could be a can of any sort, a can of food is the first thing that I think of. But before we talk about the cylinder, we're going to look at the circle very quickly. So here I've got a hand-drawn circle. It's not perfect, but it's close. You can notice I've labeled the center point, the direct middle. The diameter is a line that passes through the center and connects 2 points on the circle. If I were to pick any other point on the circle, let's say here, for example, and if I were going to connect that point to the center, this line is known as radius. The radius is any point on a circle connected to the center point, the distance between those 2 points. That's the radius. So here it's about 4 centimeters. If I picked another point on the circle, let's say over here, for example, and if I connected my line from here to the center, it should measure at about 4 centimeters, which it does, because this is also a radius. So when we think about cylinders and its connection to circles, we need to understand what area is. And the way that I think about area is just the amount of cover. So if I were going to say how much is covered on the inside of this circle, how much space is covered on the inside of this circle? You could also think about like the floor of your room or classroom. That would be an example of area. How much carpet or wood covers that floor? So area really deals with two dimensions, or 2D is another way you can think of that, 2D. So there's 2 dimensions being talked about in area. The units for area are square units, or you could say units squared, and that's important. We'll talk about when I get to volume. So square units or units squared. And the formula for the area of a circle is that the area is equal to pi times the radius squared, pi r squared. That number pi right here is a constant. It's a constant. So yes, it's a symbol, and yes, we call it pi, but pi is a number. It's a constant number. It's often you'll hear your teacher refer to it as 3.14. It's a non-repeating decimal that goes on infinitely. Okay, so just know that pi is a number. So to find the area or the cover inside of the circle, you would do the pi times r squared. Now let's take that over to a cylinder. So keeping area in mind, if we look at a cylinder, it really is 2 circles as one of the bases connected on the sides. So if we think about area and how this relates, so if you look at this base, for example, the area would just be the cover inside the top part of this base. But what's different about volume is that it takes this into a third dimension. So it thinks about how much space it takes to fill up this container. So volume you can think of as like the space to fill up a container, a 3D container. So notice the difference. Area would just be here in the 2 dimensions, like you're looking down at the top of the cylinder, just that circle, the cover. But the volume takes that cover and actually extends it into the third dimension with height. So there are 3 dimensions. There are 3 dimensions with volume, 3 dimensions, or 3D. The units here are actually cubed units, or you could say units cubed. You could put a little 3 there. I meant to mention here that this could be also units squared when we say units squared. So look at the difference here. It's got one more dimension. It's got same kind of shape at the top and the bottom, the base, it's a circle, but it's got 3 dimensions. And that's because when you see here, you've got your radius on your base circle, one of your bases, your radius. Here, you've got the height. So this right here is the height. So the formula for the volume of a cylinder, the volume is going to be equal to the area of a circle. So that's that area of a circle is just the base. So one of the bases, the area of the base, which is a circle, multiplied by the height. Area of the circle multiplied by the height. You can rewrite this as the volume is equal to pi r squared, because remember, that's the area of a circle, pi r squared times the height multiplied by the height. So let's look at an example of this, okay? So here I've got a shape, a cylinder, and there's some information that you already have. I tell you that the volume of a cylinder has a height of 4 units, and it's 36 cubed units. So there's the volume. It's 36 cubed units, and it has a height of 4 units. So it's also written as 36 pi is equal to r squared pi times 4. Here's the shape. Then I ask you, what does the radius of the cylinder have to be? Explain how you know. So let's look at this one together, okay? So remember, as we just saw, the volume of a cylinder, is equal to the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, times the height. So this, we already know, this is the volume. Pi is this is pi, or it's a constant number. It could be 3.14, for example. We don't know what our radius is. We're not sure what that is, but we know what our height is. So let's figure out what we already know. So we know that the volume is 36 pi. It's expressed as pi. We know pi, and we know the height is 4 units. So we got to figure out what that missing piece is that r. So let's do that, okay? So they've written it, they've helped us out. They wrote that 36 pi, the volume, is equal to r squared times pi times 4. So we still don't know what our r squared is. We know what pi is. And we know that our height is 4. So we need to solve for r squared. So this is a multi-step equation. First thing you do, you divide by pi on both sides of the equation. Pi divided by pi is really 3.14 divided by 3.14. That's 1. So you can cross that out. Same thing over here. Pi divided by pi is 1. You're left with 36 is equal to r squared times 4. So now we need to isolate the r squared. We divide by 4 on both sides. We want to get r by itself. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 36 divided by 4 is 9. So 9 is equal to r squared. So r squared, another way of thinking about that is r times itself is equal to 9. So we got to figure out what number multiplied by itself is going to give us 9. All right? You could also write this as the square root of 9. So what number multiplied by itself is going to be equal to 9? That number is going to be 3. So 3 times 3 is going to give you 9. So when you do the square root on both sides, you're left with r is equal to 3. So the radius of our circle, in this case, has to be 3 because it's the only number that makes the equation true. And there is the volume of a cylinder explained.